بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين، صلى الله وسلم عليك يا رسول الله، صلى الله وسلم عليك يا أبا عبد الله، يا رحمة الله الواسعة، ويا باب نجاة الأمة. يا ليتنا كنا معكم سيدي فنفوز فوزا عظيما.
اللهم صل على محمد وآله.
السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا، ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. On the dawn of the 10th day of Muharram, Imam Hussein led his followers for the morning prayer. Then he wore his grandfather's armor and turban and put on his father's sword. He then stood to address his followers. Starting with the praise of Allah, he said, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inna Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala qad adina fi qatli wa qatlikum fi hadha al-yawm, fa'alaykum bis-sabri wal-qital. Allah has destined that you and I shall be killed today. I therefore would urge you to be strong and resilient in fighting. Then Imam Hussein began preparing for war and mobilized his band for war to be 7 members. He made Zuhair ibn al-Qayyim the commander of the right flank, Habib ibn Malahir the commander of the left flank, and placed his household in the center. Imam then gave the flag to his brother al-Abbas. The troops gathered in front of the tents where the women and children were housed. Umar ibn Sa'ad, the commander of the enemy army, came with 30,000 troops. He made Amr ibn al-Hajjaj the commander of the right flank, and Shimr ibn al-Jawshan the commander of the left flank. When Imam Hussein saw their gathering, which was like a torrent, raised his hands to the sky and prayed, Allahumma anta thiqati fi kulli karb, wa anta raja'i fi kulli shiddah, وأنتني في كل أمر نزل بي ثقة وعدة. O my Lord, you are my haven in every mishap, my hope in every predicament, my refuge and defender in every ordeal. How many a distress that weakens the heart, makes the enemy rejoice at the misfortune when I entrusted them to you and resorted to you out of preference over others. You did not let me down, and had driven away and eliminated all these distressing things. You are the giver of every boon and the ultimate source of every wish to be granted. Then he mounted his horse and stood in front of them, ready to speak. He began by saying, O people, track back my lineage to see who I am, then look back and think to yourselves, think about whether it is right for you to kill me and violate my integrity. Am I not the son of your prophet's daughter? Am I not the son of your prophet's successor? Was not Hamza, the master of martyrs, my father's uncle? Was not Ja'far my uncle? Have you not heard the prophet's words concerning my brother and I? Al-Hasan wal-Hussein, Sayyidi Shababi Ahli al-Jannah. Hassan and Hussein are the masters of the youth of paradise. Whether you believe in what I say or not, even though it is the truth, there are men among you that if you ask them, they will tell you I speak the truth. Ask Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari, Zayd ibn Arqam, and Anas ibn Malik to tell you that they heard these words from the Messenger of Allah in favor of my brother and I. Submit to the authority of your kinsmen, said Qais ibn al-Ash'ath. They have never treated you badly. By God, I will never give you my hand like a humiliated man, nor will I flee like a slave. لا والله لا أعطيكم بيدي إعطاء الذليل ولا أفر فرار العبيد. Imam Hussein then raised his hands toward the sky and said, اللهم احبس عنهم قطر السماء وابعث عليهم سنين كسنين يوسف وسلط عليهم غلام ثقيف يسقيهم كأسا مصبرة لا يدع فيهم أحدا إلا قتله. O Allah, give them no rain and afflict them with the barren years like the years of Yusuf, and make them slaves to the man from Thaqaf, for they have labeled us as liars and have let us down. You are our Lord, we rely on you, and to you we return. Then he began to plead for help and rescue. When Al-Hurr ibn Yazid al-Riyahi heard his plea for help, he went to Umar ibn Sa'ad and asked him, أَمُقَاتِلٌ هَذَا الرَّجُلْ أَنْتَ? Are you really going to fight this man? Umar replied, "Ee Wallah, yes, by the Almighty, the kind of fighting in which heads will fall and arms will be severed." Al-Hurr said, "Are you not satisfied with what he has proposed to you?" Umar replied, "If it was up to me, I would accept his proposal, but your master Ibn Ziyad has his orders." Al-Hurr then stood in the middle of the battlefield and began to tremble. Al-Muhajir ibn Aus called him and said, "You arise my doubt, O Hurr. I have never seen you in this situation, and if someone asked me about the most courageous man in Kufa, I would have never chosen anyone else other than you." Al-Hurr began to say, "Inni ara nafsi mukhayyaratun bayna al-jannati wan-nar." I am making a decision between paradise and hellfire, and by Allah, I choose nothing over paradise, even if it means certain death. He then gradually drew nearer to the camp of Imam Hussein and was saying, "Allahumma ilayka unib fatub alay, faqad ar'abtu quluba awliyaik wa awladi binti nabiyyik." O Allah, I ask you for forgiveness and mercy, for I have brought fear and distress into the hearts of your loved ones and into the hearts of the sons of your prophet. As soon as he reached the Imam asked him who he was. Al-Hurr appeared with tears in his eyes and said, "My master, I am the one who brought you to this and prevented you from returning to where you came from." Imam says, "Are you Hurr?" Al-Hurr replied, "Yes, my master." "Hal li min tawbah, do you think Allah will accept my repentance?" Imam said, "If you repent, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive you." Umar ibn Sa'ad drew nearer to the camp of Imam Hussein and ordered the bearer of the flag to move forward. He then took an arrow, placed it in his arc, and released it in the direction of the Imam's camp and said, "Ishhadu li 'inda al-Amir, bear witness for me with the Amir, that I was the first to shoot an arrow at the camp of Hussein." The arrow was then followed like rain, causing injuries among the companions of Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein then said, "قوموا رحمكم الله إلى الموت الذي لا بد منه فإن هذه السهام رسل القوم إليكم." My companions, rise to the certain death. May Allah have mercy on you. These arrows are the messengers of your enemies to you. The companions then waged a battle and fought for an hour. When the dust settled, there were 50 of them dead. When the Imam saw this sight, he said, "اشتد غضب الله على اليهود إذ جعلوا له ولدا واشتد غضبه على النصارى إذ جعلوه ثالث ثلاثة واشتد غضبه على المجوس إذ عبدوا الشمس والقمر دونه واشتد غضبه على قوم اتفقت كلمتهم على قتل ابن بنت نبيهم أما والله لا أجيبهم إلى شيء مما يريدون حتى أنقى الله وأنا مخضب بدمي. Allah's wrath was on the Jews because they claimed he had a son, and on the Christians because they made him one of the Trinity, and on the people who were unanimous in the agreement to kill the son of their prophet's daughter. By Allah, I will not give up until I meet Allah drenched in my blood. Then he shouted, ألا هل من ناصر ينصرنا ألا هل من معين يعيننا ألا هل من ذاب يذب عن حرم رسول الله. Is there no one who can come to our rescue? Is there no one who can protect the sanctity of the Prophet's family? When the women heard his plea, they began to weep. One by one, the companions of Imam Hussein asked for permission to enter the battlefield to fight the enemy, bidding him farewell. Al-Hurr ibn Yazid al-Riyahi entered into the battlefield, attacking the enemy troops, killing over 40 of them. When his horse was wounded, he fought them on foot until he fell to the ground. Imam Hussein rushed to him. Aba Abdullah, alayka minni salam. He removed the blood and sand from his face. Bakhin laka ya Hurr. Congratulations, O Hurr, Imam said to him. Anta hurrun fi dunya wa sa'idun fil akhirah. You are truly a free man, just like your mother had named you, and you shall be happy in the next life. Aslam, the servant of Imam Hussein, was next. He fought very bravely. When he was wounded, he called the Imam for help. The Imam came to him and hugged him for the last time. Aslam smiled, thanked Allah for granting him martyrdom, and passed away. Muslim ibn Awsaja assaulted the enemy and fought very bravely. Amr ibn al-Hajjaj, along with his troops, counterattacked the camp of Imam. When the two forces clashed and the dust settled, Muslim ibn Awsaja was found fallen but still alive. Imam Hussein and Habib ibn Madahir rushed to him. Imam said to him, Rahimakallah ya Muslim, may Allah have mercy on you, O Muslim. Habib said to him, I am so sorry to see you in this state. You are entering paradise, O Muslim. And if I was not absolutely sure that I would follow in your footsteps, I would have asked you to give me your last will. Muslim said, yes, I do have one will. My will is for you to take care of this man. Alayka bihada. Sacrifice your last breath that you have for him. Habib told him, rest assured that I will. Among those who remained alive at this stage was Wahab al-Kalbi. Wahab was a Christian who was accompanied by his newly married wife and his mother. All of them declared their Islam before Imam Hussein on the way to Karbala. His mother urged him to do his best on the battlefield. His wife urged him to stay. She did not want him to go because they were newlyweds. Nevertheless, he entered the battlefield, killing some and wounding others. He returned to his mother and said, Mother, are you satisfied with me? She turned to him and said, I will never be satisfied until you are killed for the cause of Imam Hussein. His wife said, for God's sake, that we have just gotten married and I cannot stand the thought of your death. His mother interrupted, saying, do not listen, go back for Imam Hussein. You will earn his grandfather's intercession on the Day of Judgment. He went back into the battlefield. He began to fight. He killed 19 knights and another 20 of the infantry. Then when he was injured, at that moment his wife carried a pole and rushed towards him, saying, فداك أبي وأمي قاتل دون الطيبين حرم رسول الله. May my father and mother be your sacrifice. Fight for the sake of the household of Rasulullah. Do not return alive to me. Wahab said, some time ago you were objecting and now you are urging me to fight. What happened? His wife said the following, يا وهب لا تلمني إن واعية الحسين قطعت نياط قلبي. يا وهب رأيته جالسا بباب الخيمة وهو ينادي وقلة ناصرة. Do not blame me, Wahab. I have forsaken life since I heard the Imam calling, Oh Allah, how are we left alone? Is there anybody to support us? and his voice has torn my heart into pieces. Wahab kept fighting until he lost both his arms and he was killed. His wife walked towards the body and sat near his head, wiping the blood away from his face and saying, "Congratulations, for you are guaranteed a place in heaven. I pray to the Almighty to bestow it upon me, to make me join you." Shimr ibn Joshan, who was around, dispatched his servant to kill her. He dealt a fatal blow to her head, and she died immediately on the body of her husband. After morning prayers, Joan Mawla Abi Dhar approached Imam Hussein asking permission to fight. Imam told him that he does not need to fight and that he can leave the battle. He said to him, "Joan, أنت طلبتنا في عافية والآن أنت حل من بيعتنا." Joan began to cry. He said to the Imam, "Sayyidi Aba Abdullah, أنا في الرخاء ألحس قصاعكم وفي الشدة أخذلكم." At times of comfort I was with you, I ate from your leftovers, but at times of hardship I abandoned you. Never, لا والله لا يكون ذلك حتى يختلط دمي مع دمائكم الطاهرة الزكية. Never I will fight you until my blood mixes with your pure blood. Joan then entered and fought very bravely. Until he fell, he called for the Imam. Imam Hussein came to him, he wept over him, and he did something which he did not do to anyone except for his own son, Ali al-Akbar. He placed his cheeks on the cheeks of Joan, a gesture of love and honor, and he began to weep for him. Once all of the companions had passed away, the family of Imam Hussein became ready for battle. The first to come forward was Ali al-Akbar, Imam Hussein's oldest son. Narration suggests that he was 27 years old when Ali asked for permission from his father. Imam Hussein could not hold back his tears. He looked to Umar ibn Sa'ad and said, "قطع الله رحمك كما قطعت رحمي ولم تحفظ قرابتي من رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وسلط عليك من يذبحك على فراشك." ثم رفع شيبته المقدسة نحو السماء وقال: "اللهم اشهد على هؤلاء فقد برز إليهم أشبه الناس برسولك محمد خلقا وخلقا ومنطقا، وكنا إذا اشتقنا إلى رؤية نبيك نظرنا إليه. اللهم فامنعهم بركات الأرض وفرقهم تفريقا ومزقهم تمزيقا واجعلهم طرائق قددا ولا ترضي الولاة منهم أبدا." Imam Hussein lifted his hands to the sky and he began to curse Umar ibn Sa'ad. "Ya Umar, may Allah bereave you of your children the same way you are trying to bereave me of my children." And then the Imam recited the verse, إن الله اصطفى آدم ونوحا وآل إبراهيم وآل عمران على العالمين ذرية بعضها من بعض والله سميع عليم. O Allah, bear witness that they are killing a young man who bears striking resemblance to your Prophet, and that when we used to miss the Prophet, we looked to the face of this young man. He was the remnants of the Prophet. He was the one who used to remind us of him. O Umar, may Allah bereave you of your family the same way you have bereaved me of mine. Ali al-Akbar entered into the battlefield, killing tens of troops and reciting the epic, أنا علي بن الحسين بن علي نحن ورب البيت أولى بالنبي تالله لا يحكم فينا ابن الدعي. I am Ali, the son of Hussein, the son of Ali. Wallah, we are closer to the Prophet than anyone, and we will not allow he whose father is not known rule over us. I will strike you until my sword is broken into pieces. Due to the immense thirst he felt and the pain from the scorching sun, he came back to the camp asking his father for water. Aba Abdullah, is there any water for me to drink? العطش قد قتلني وثقل الحديد أجهدني. That the thirst is killing me and the heaviness of my armor is taking a toll on me. Imam Hussein alayhi salam looked to his son. He showed him his tongue, which was drier than a piece of wood, and then he told him, "I am thirstier than you, my dear son." and if I had any water, then I would give you this water. But rest assured that Rasulullah will be the first one to quench your thirst. Ali al-Akbar went back into the battlefield, fighting with greater fears. It was his grandfather, Imam Ali alayhi salam, in the battlefield. Finally, Ya Mu'mineen, Murrat ibn Munqidh approached him. He dealt a blow to Ali's head, causing him to fall from his horse. His horse, not being able to see the blood, not being able to see his direction from the blood covering his eyes, began to drag Ali to the enemy camp. فَقَطَّعُوهُ إِرْبًا إِرْبًا. They began to strike him from all directions. At last he cried, أَبَتَاهْ أَبَا عَبْدِ اللَّهِ عليك مني السلام هذا جدي قد سقاني بكأسه شربة لا أظمأ بعدها أبدا وإن لك كأسا مذخورا فالعجل العجل أبتاه أبا عبد الله. This is my grandfather Rasulullah. He is quenching my thirst. He has provided me a cup of water from Jannah, and he says, Al-Ajal, Al-Ajal, come to us, Ya Aba Abdullah. We have water which is waiting for you. Farewell, farewell, my dear father. At this moment, Imam Hussein alayhi salam approaches him in the battlefield, and instead of dismounting his horse, Imam Hussein falls from the top of his horse onto the body of his son. Bunayya Ali ala dunya ba'daka al-afa. My dear son, life is not worth living anymore after you. How dare they encroach on Allah and violate the sanctity of the Prophet? Alas, it is hard on your grandfather and your father that you call upon them for help that they cannot provide. He then scooped a handful of his pure blood and threw it into the sky. Imam Hussein, at that point, he does not have any power to bring his son back. He does not have any power to drag him back to the camp. He then ordered the youth to come and carry Ali back to the camp. The women gathered around Ali. They were weeping, they were crying, they were beating their chests. Imam Hussein alayhi salam joins them in their aza. He sits in the tent with them and he weeps and he beats his own chest for his son. The turn was now for the 14-year-old orphan Qasim, the son of Imam al-Hassan. Imam Hussein alayhi salam first refused to give him permission since Qasim was an orphan and he was the only memory remaining of his brother al-Hassan. Bunayya Hassan, anta wadi'atu akhi al-Hassan. Bunayya Qasim, anta wadi'atu akhi al-Hassan. My dear son Qasim, you are the only memory, the remnants that we have of my brother Hassan. If you go out into the battlefield, who will there be to remain to remind us of my dear brother? Qasim turns back, he goes to his mother at that moment, and Qasim remembers a letter that his father had written to him. He opens up the letter, and the letter is written by his father to him, saying, Bunayya Qasim, إذا اشتدت عليك الأمور فعليك بنصرة عمك الحسين. My dear Qasim, if you find yourself in distress and calamity, it is incumbent upon you that you come to the aid of your uncle al-Hussein. Imam Hussein alayhi salam at this point turns to al-Qasim. He hugs him, he kisses him. He says, Bunayya Qasim, what do you think about death? How do you perceive death? He says, Ya Amma fi nusratikum ahla min al-asali. If it is for your right, if it is for your cause, then death is surely sweeter than honey. Imam Hussein at this point, he grabs Qasim, he begins to weep, and they begin to weep until they both fall to the floor. At this moment, Imam Hussein turns to his sister Zainab. Ukhayya Zainab, itini bi'imamati akhi al-Hasan. She brings to him the armor. She brings to him the turban of his father al-Hasan. And Imam Hussein places it on the head of the boy and around his back. But it is too big for him to wear. So Imam al-Hussein takes a piece from his turban. He wraps one piece around the back of Qasim to hold the armor. He wraps another piece around the headpiece in order to keep it in place. He gives him the sword. He sends him into the battlefield. But before going to the battlefield, he goes and visits his amma, he goes and visits his mother in their tent. At this point, they were disoriented. When he entered, they thought that it was his father, Al-Hasan. Wa Hasana, Wa Hasana, is this you back from the dead? Are you here to support us? At this moment, he identifies himself as the young Qasim. They begin to cry for the orphan, and with their blessings, he goes out into the battlefield. In tunkiruni fa'ana najlu al-Hasan, صبط النبي المصطفى والمؤتمن. هذا الحسين كالأسير المرتهن بين أناس لاصقوا صوب المزن. If you do not know me, then I am Qasim, the son of Hassan. I am the grandson of Rasulullah and the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And I am here to defend this prisoner Hussein, and I will fight till my last breath. Qasim began to fight. He began to fight the enemy very bravely until a man goes out into the battlefield from the enemy camp. He says, Wallah, I will bereave Hussein of this young boy. Wallah, I will take this young boy from his uncle. At this moment, he approaches Al-Qasim and he strikes him upon his head. Qasim falls to the floor. The blood begins to gush from his head. He is disoriented and he is confused. At this point, he does not see his direction. Imam Hussein, atahu kas-saqr al-munqid. He comes from afar. Imam Hussein unsheathes his sword and he kills the enemy of Qasim. And then he turns to his son Qasim, his nephew, يَعُزُّ اللَّهُ عَلَىٰ عَمِّكَ أن تدعوه فلا يجيبك أو يجيبك فلا يعينك أو يعينك فلا يغني عنك بعدا والله لقوم قتلوك وحسبهم يوم القيامة جدك وأبوك. It is with grief and it is with sorrow that you call upon me, but I cannot respond. And if I respond, I cannot come to your help. And on the day of judgment, Allah and His Prophet and your father and your uncles will judge between you and your enemies. He brings Al-Qasim back to the tent of Imam Hussein. He brings him to the tents of the Shuhada. He places Qasim next to Ali al-Akbar, Ya Mu'mineen. And Imam Hussein lies between Ali al-Akbar and Qasim. He turns to Ali al-Akbar, he turns to Qasim, and he begins to weep. Ramla comes inside, she begins to weep for her son. My dear son, it was my hopes that one day you would carry me to my grave, but it is today that I am carrying you to your grave. My dear Qasim, it was my hopes that I would see you married and prosper, but my hopes and dreams have been shattered on this day. After Qasim came out Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. When Abbas saw the death toll rising, he stood up and ordered his brothers Abdullah, Uthman and Ja'far to enter the battlefield, and they fought one by one. One by one they fought and were killed. It was now time for Abbas himself to enter the battle. He came to his brother Imam Hussein seeking permission to fight. Imam Hussein did not want to lose Abbas. أخي أنت حامل لوائي أنت حامل لوائي والعلامة من بعدي. Tears filled the eyes of Imam Hussein. He said, you are the bearer of my flag. You are the standard after me. If you die, my back is going to break. My entire army will collapse and my enemies will rejoice. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas replied, I am tired of these hypocrites. I do not want to break your army, but I cannot stand the sound of the children crying out, Al-Atash, Al-Atash, we are thirsty. Their sounds of thirst is killing me. I want to seek my revenge from these people. When Imam Hussein saw Al-Abbas adamant about fighting, he said, my brother, do not fight, but go out and seek some water for these children. Al-Abbas immediately mounted his horse. He took the canteen. He headed towards the river, cutting through the enemy lines. He was surrounded by some 4,000 troops who began to shoot at him with their arrows, but he did not fear their multitudes, dodging their strikes and arrows. The standard hoisted over his head, he started attacking, causing them to flee in front of him. and he managed to reach the waterline of the river with fortitude. As soon as he reached the river, he grabbed a handful of water to drink. فَتَذَكَّرَ عَطَشَ الْحُسَيْنِ. He remembered the thirst of his brother Hussein. Imam al-Sadiq says, كَانَ قَلْبَ عَمِّي الْعَبَّاسِ كَصَالِيَةِ الْجَمْرِ مِنَ الظَّمَا. The heart of my uncle Abbas was like a burning piece of charcoal. He remembered the thirst of his brother. He dropped the water immediately. He could not drink while Imam Hussein and the children were still thirsty. He began to speak to himself. يا نفس من بعد الحسين هوني وبعده لا كنت أن تكوني. هذا الحسين شارب المنون وتشربين بارد المعين. والله ما هذا فعال ديني ولا فعال صادق اليقين. Wallah, a person who is truthful with himself cannot drink water while his brother is dying of thirst. He begins to fill the water skin canteen. He mounted his horse again and headed towards the camp. It is at this moment, Ya Mu'mineen, the enemy troops surrounded him from every direction. They began to attack him all together. Al-Hakam ibn al-Tufayl was waiting behind a tree. He was waiting for Al-Abbas to approach. And then he came out from behind the tree and he struck him on his right arm, immediately severing it. Al-Abbas began to recite, وَاللَّهِ إِن قَطَعْتُمُ يَمِينِي إِنِّي أُحَامِي أَبَدًا عَنْ دِينِي وعن إمام صادق اليقين نجل النبي الطاهر الأمين. Wallah, if you were to cut off my right arm, I would still protect my religion, and I would still protect the Imam who is truthful, and the Imam who is pure, and the grandson of the one who is trustworthy. He then grabbed the container with his left arm until another man came out and struck him on his left arm, severing it. Al-Abbas said, يا نفس لا تخشي من الكفار وأبشري برحمة الجبار ببغيهم قد قطعوا يساري فأصلهم يا رب حر النار. At this point, he managed to grab the water container with his teeth, staying without his two arms. He began running towards the camp of Imam Hussein, but the enemy did not give him a chance. They rained down on him with arrows. One fell into the eye of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, one hitting the water canteen, causing it to drop, and another arrow pierced through his chest. Al-Abbas was hopeless when the container fell. At this point, brothers and sisters, when the container fell, this is when Al-Abbas lost all hope. His mission was to bring back water, and he had failed his mission. He stopped going towards the camp. Instead, he stood in his spot. He was writhing in his blood, in his pain. All of a sudden, one of the wicked troops hit him with a pole on his head, causing Al-Abbas to fall on the ground. He called Imam Hussein for help. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Akhi udruk akhak. My brother Aba Abdullah, I have fallen to the ground. Come to my rescue. Imam Hussein approaches Al-Abbas on the battlefield. The enemies begin to scatter left and right. إلى أين تذهبون وقد قتلتم ابن والدي إلى أين تذهبون وقد كسرتم ظهري. Where have you gone? You have broken my back. You have killed the son of my father. Imam Hussein rushes to him, causing the enemy troops to flee. When he approached him, he first saw the water skin and then the flag on the ground. He saw the two arms of Abu al-Abbas scattered on the battleground. Abbas was lying there in his own blood, an arrow embedded in his eye, and one arrow embedded in his chest. Imam Hussein could not control himself. He cried immensely, saying, Akhi, al-an inkazara dhahri, wa qallat hilati, wa shamuta bi aduwi, akhi man lil-'iyal ba'dak, akhi man lil-fawatim ba'dak. Abbas, you have broken my back. Abbas, my enemy has rejoiced over your death. Abbas, there is no one to support me any longer. Abbas, who will safeguard the daughters of Rasulullah after you? Imam Hussein urged Abbas to get up so that he may take him back to the camp. Abbas refused. He had promised the children to get them water. He could not go back to the camp empty-handed. After a few moments, Imam Hussein was seen walking back to the camp alone, downhearted, sorrowful. He was hopeless and weeping, wiping his tears with his shirt sleeves. Imam Hussein returned to the camp. Sukaina approached and asked him about her uncle. She was rejoicing. She thought that he had brought some water back. He told her that al-Abbas had been killed. Zainab overheard him and screamed, "Oh Abbas, what a loss!" The woman started crying and Hussein joined them. "Wa akha, wa Abbasa, wa Abbasa, wa day'atana ba'dak." What a loss we have incurred after you. After the death of al-Abbas, Imam Hussein was left without supporters. He looked around. He saw nothing but dead bodies around him. He kept on shouting, هل من ذاب يذب عن حرم رسول الله؟ هل من موحد يخاف الله فينا؟ هل من مغيث يرجو الله إغاثتنا? Is there no one to help us? Is there no monotheist? Is there no one who worships Allah, who is afraid of Allah? Is there no one to protect us? Before Imam Hussein said his last farewell, his sister Zainab brought him his infant Abdullah. Zainab told him, "My brother, before you go, please ask these men for a few drops of water for this child. This child is dying out of thirst. He can no longer move. He can no longer breathe. He can no longer weep." Imam Hussein took his son and he headed towards the enemy and he asked them for a few drops of water. The enemy huddled around each other to decide whether to give him water or not. At this point, Ya Mu'mineen, the army of the enemy began to conflict among themselves. This son, this baby has no sin. Why should we not give him water? Let us give him water. Some of them, they unsheathed their swords. They turned to the commanders of the army. They said, "If you do not give this baby boy water, we will kill all of you." Umar ibn Sa'ad at this point, he turns to Harmala ibn Kahil. He says, "Ya Harmala, come here." An expert in shooting arrows. He turns to him, "Ya Harmala, come here. Iqta' niza' al-qawm." End the discussion between the people. Harmala turns to him. He says, "Who should I shoot? Should I shoot the father or the son?" Umar ibn Sa'ad, Ya Mu'mineen, turns to him. He says, "Do you not see the shining neck of the infant? Do you not see the shining neck? It is a target for you." Harmalat ibn Kahil, he takes a poisoned 3-pronged sword. He shoots it towards the direction of Imam Hussein. The arrow falls in the neck of Abdullah al-Radi'. At this moment, after hours of not moving, Abdullah al-Radi' takes his hands out of his clothes as if he is feeling the pain. Finally, Imam Hussein takes a handful of blood from his son and he throws it up into the sky. He says, "It is easy to bear my calamities because I know Allah is watching over me." And Imam al-Baqir says that none of the blood that he threw into the sky came back down to the ground. He came back to the camp of Imam Hussein. Sukaina was joyful. She was rejoicing. She thought that these merciless men would at least have some mercy when it came to her younger brother. She thought that Imam was coming back. He had quenched the thirst of Abdullah and he was now about to quench their thirst. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, so embarrassed from his sister, embarrassed from the mother of the child, embarrassed from the daughters, he shows them Abdullah al-Radi' with the arrow in his neck. The woman began to cry. What was the sin of this young boy? Imam Hussein at this point, he goes to the tent of the Shuhada. He makes a small little grave by the graves of the Shuhada. He buries his son Abdullah. As he is leaving, he hears a voice saying, "Dahu ya Hussein, Dahu ya Hussein, فَإِنَّ لَهُ مُرْضِعَةً بِالْجَنَّةِ." Leave him, Ya Hussein, for he has a nurse in Jannah waiting to come to his aid. At this moment, Imam Hussein alayhi salam looked hopeless to live. he came back to his family, bidding them farewell for one last time. Ya Zainab wa ya Kulthum wa ya Sukayna wa ya Ruqayya wa ya Rabab. عليكن مني السلام الوداع الوداع فهذا آخر الاجتماع وقد قرب منكن الافتجاع واستعدوا للبلاء واعلموا أن الله حافظكم وحاميكم وسينجيكم من شر الأعداء. أو زينب, أو Kulthum, أو Ruqayya, أو Sukayna, أو Rabab, may peace be with you. I am going away and we shall meet in paradise. Be patient after my death, for you have many tragedies awaiting you. Then he asked for his horse. Zainab alayhi salam, she brings him his horse, her eyes filling with tears. When Imam Hussein mounted his horse for the last time, he wanted to head towards the battlefield. He heard a faint voice calling him from behind. He looked back to see it was his sister Zainab asking him to come down from his horse. She told him, Akhi Aba Abdullah, come down from your horse, dismount, there is one thing that I need to do. Come down from your horse. She embraced him, she said, Hulli Azrarak, I want you to unbutton your armor that is covering your neck and your chest. He begins to unbutton his armor. She takes him by his neck and she plants a kiss on his neck. Then she turns to her mother. My mother, Ummah ya Fatima, Ummah ya Fatima, لقد استرجعت الوديعة وأديت الأمانة. I have fulfilled your wish and your covenant which you left for me. Her mother had told her that before your brother Hussein parts from you, I want you to kiss him on his chest and his neck on my behalf. For it is the neck and the chest that Rasulullah so often used to kiss. At this point, Imam Hussein rode into the battlefield for one last time. Ya mu'mineen, أنا الحسين بن علي آليت أن لا أنثني أحمي عيالات أبي أمضي على دين النبي. Thereupon Umar ibn Sa'ad yelled at the crowd, my view, he is the son of the exterminator of the Arabs. Set upon him from every direction, they began to rain down Imam Hussein with many arrows. The soldiers cut him off from his camp. He shouted, ويحكم يا شيعة آل أبي سفيان إن لم يكن لكم دين وكنتم لا تخافون المعاد فكونوا أحرارا في دنياكم إن كنتم عربا كما تزعمون. Shimr explained, what are you saying, the son of Fatima? Hussein replied, I am the one who is fighting you, and the women are not at fault. So as long as I am alive, forbid your insolent thugs from harassing the daughters of Rasulullah. Shimr acceded to his request, whereupon the enemy soldiers targeted him. A fierce fighting raged. Since he was very thirsty, he attacked the flank of the army which was sealing up the river. He managed to disperse them and make his way to the river. Once he was near the water, he wanted to extend himself to drink. A caller shouted, do you enjoy drinking water while the integrity of your family has been violated? He let the water spill from his hands without drinking, and he returned to the tents. He charged the enemy once again. When Umar ibn Sa'ad saw him approaching, he ordered his soldiers to attack him from every direction. One by one they met the Imam, and the Imam fought them fearlessly. After killing tens of them, and after being severely wounded, the Imam became tired. He asked the enemy for some water. Shimr answered, you are not going to taste it until you enter the hellfire. Imam Hussein had to stop and rest. As he was resting, Ya Mu'mineen, one of the enemies struck him with a stone on his forehead, causing the blood to gush down from his face. The Imam took a piece of cloth to wipe the blood off his face. Suddenly another enemy pointed a poison arrow at the Imam, penetrating the Imam's chest. The Imam began to recite, Bismillah wa billah wa ala millati Rasulillah sabran ala qada'ik la ma'buda siwak aghithni ya qiyat al-mustaghithin. In the name of Allah, by Allah, and on the path of the Messenger of Allah. O Allah, I call upon you for help. He then raised his head to the sky and said, "O Allah, you know very well that they are killing the grandson of the Prophet, and there is no other grandson besides him." He pulled the arrow from his chest, causing the blood to stream down. He put his hand under his chest. He filled it with blood. He threw the blood towards the sky and said, "My only comfort is that what has befallen me is in the way of Allah. هون علي ما نزل بي أنه بعين الله." He then filled his hand again with blood, this time staining his hair and his beard. He said, "I wish to meet Allah and my grandfather drenched with my blood." Imam Hussein, fatally wounded, was left lying on the ground for a considerable time. None of the soldiers had the boldness to come and finish him off. The Imam's horse started roaming around him, staining his forehead with the Imam's blood. The horse kept circling around the Imam as if it were to tell him to get up because the enemy is approaching. And Imam al-Baqir was quoted as saying, the horse was saying, "Al-Ghanimatu al-Ghanima min ummatin qatalat ibnu nabiha." What an injustice has been done to the grandson of the Prophet by his own nation. The horse then headed towards the camp of Imam Hussein. The woman heard the voice of the horse, thinking that Imam Hussein had come back to them. However, they came out of their tent to see the horse without the knife, drenched in the blood of his master. They began to beat their chests, shouting, "Ya Hussein! Ya Hussein! Ya Hussein! Ya Hussein!" Zainab immediately rushed to the scene to see what is happening of her brother. She saw the Imam lying on the ground, surrounded by the enemy. Zainab shouted, "O Umar, have you no mercy to see my brother in this state? He is still alive. Do not kill him." Is there no Muslim, no one who fears God among you? Umar ibn Sa'ad, his tears streaming down his face, shouted to his soldiers, "Go down and finish him off." At the sound of this command, Ya Mu'mineen, Shimr ibn al-Jawshan began to approach the Imam. Ya Mu'mineen, he came near the Imam. He sat on his chest. Wa Husaynah! Wa Husaynah! Shimr ibn al-Jawshan came. He sat on the chest. He sat on the honorable chest of the Imam. Zainab sees him from far. Ya Shimr, have mercy, for this is the grandson of Rasulullah. Do not commit this crime. He still has life in him. Shimr, not heeding the call of Zainab, he sits on the chest of Imam Hussein. فَقَبَضَ عَلَى شَيْبَتِهِ. He grabs the beard of Imam Hussein. He curses him. He curses his father and mother. He begins to strike the head of Hussein. Ya Hussein! Ya Hussein! Ya Hussein! Shimr, and then begins to sever the head of Imam Hussein. رحم الله من نادى وحسينا وحسينا وشهيدا ومظلوما وسيدا وغريبا وحسينا. حسين 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 أبد والله يا زهراء ما ننسى حسينا. أبد والله stand up. ما ننسى حسين. أبد والله يا زهراء ما ننسى حسينا. أبد والله ما ننسى حسينا. أبد والله يا زهراء ما ننسى حسين. أبد والله يا زهراء ما ننسى حسين. أبد والله يا زهراء. 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 حسين 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 حسين
ليالينا ليالينا شفت بينا ليالينا وداعا يا حسين وداعا يا حسين ليالينا ليالينا جبت بينا ليالينا وداعا